Hello, and welcome to the Last Edit Podcast, a weekly podcast on film with myself, Citizen Sleeve, my damn fine friend,
Silver Hawkins.
and this week, our very special guest.
Mike Fury.
You are most welcome here, sir.
Thank you.
Now, we are deep into the catalogue of the Coen Brothers at this stage. We've got plenty more to come. Big catalogue, as you know. And after what I considered the abomination of last week's The Lady Killers, we are now back on form, in my opinion, with the 2007 film No Country for Old Men. Now, this is one of their thrillers with a Western flavour. It takes place in the 80s in Texas and partly Mexico. It features a stellar cast, absolutely stellar. The likes of Tommy Lee Jones, Javier Bardem, Woody Harrelson, Josh Brolin, Kelly Macdonald. The list just goes. Stephen Root. The list just goes on and on. Essentially, it's a very twisty thriller in the vein of something like Blood Simple. It might be the most akin film to Blood Simple that we've come across so far, with touches of Fargo perhaps as well. Now, it's essentially about a guy called Llewellyn, played by Josh Brolin, who comes across a cartel meet-up drug kind of situation that's gone very, very wrong. It's been a bloodbath. And he finds a case of money. There are hitmen involved. There's also hitmen tracking hitmen. There is a sheriff played by Tommy Lee Jones who is trying to find Llewellyn. And it's one of those films that has a great sense of Coen's realism, which we'll get to when we get to the kind of ending of the film. So, first of all, I'm going to throw it over to our guest, Mike Fury. Initially, because you hadn't seen it before as well, which is really interesting.
I think there's some stuff we need to cover before that as well, though, in terms of the intro, just to set it up. It's worth mentioning, it is an adaptation of the Cormac McCarthy novel.
Cormac McCarthy, yeah.
By the same name. And it is so faithful that basically the script is basically the book. So this is an example really of the Coens. They didn't really write the script. Most of it is McCarthy, pretty much line by line verbatim out of the book. I think I haven't actually read the book. I have read other McCarthy novels.
Like The Road, yeah.
And certainly No Country comes close, I think, to Blood Meridian in a lot of its themes, which is one I have read. But yeah, it's an adaptation and a pretty faithful one at that, which really sets it apart in terms of of the Coens' larger work, because they do tend to write their scripts themselves and make original works. So they will later make another adaptation with True Grit, also based on a novel. But this was their first, and really quite faithful to the source material, from what I understand. And yeah, okay. Mike, please take it from there.
Yeah. Already. It's one of the better movies I've seen in terms of. So there's so much detail throughout the whole entire movie where we had just talked about it previously, the unwrapping of the peanuts that he was eating. Details like that, details like the car being perfectly parked on the horizon, details like his overwhelming, like Javier Bardem's overwhelming portrayal of like this weird kind of unorthodox hitman, and the psyche around so many different characters and just how they perceive things is also like one of my favorite things about it. Like how Tommy Lee Jones is like this sheriff who's obviously going down this certain kind of realization that it's no longer his world or his playground. Like he's kind of like, I'm getting too old for this kind of thing. It's so, and the best part is like, even at the ending, like we'll get to the ending, but I'm still reeling about it. It's still like coming, like I'm still piecing everything together, but it's such a excellent movie, and it doesn't need to tell you so much, and like there's not long forms of exposition, but there is exposition, and it gives you enough detail for you to understand more or less what's going on, and I adore it for that. It's pretty, like, besides the portrayal, which I think that the acting of Javier Bardem is probably the tipping point, like the best part of the movie. I think just the way it's scripted in general is probably the second best part of the movie. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, Slave, you said you hadn't seen it in like 5 years, right?
Been a little while, so there's a few moments that I'd forgotten. Certainly, some of the details anyway. What I find so wonderful about this particular film, I mean, obviously it leans on a lot of the Coen strengths. We've already talked about that sense of realism, and we'll get to the ending because that's the kind of thing that would happen in real life. This is not your typical tropey Hollywood structure, where everything works out the way you would expect it to. And obviously that's partly McCormack's writing, McCarthy's writing, but also just the unconventional way that Coens usually create their films, which is what makes them so unique. I think the cinematography in this is absolutely beautiful. Some of the shots of Texas, initially we have the haze of the heat in Texas and those beautiful wide shots.
The opening shots very much recall back to the opening of Blood Simple. Only in Blood Simple it was of course narrated by Mark Emmett Walsh with those same like Texas vistas over the Texas oil fields. Whereas in No Country we open on the plains or like the desert in Texas.
Yeah, with that narration from Tommy Lee Jones initially, his sheriff's Ed Tom character. And what I like about that is because one of the major complaints I had with The Man Who Wasn't There was Billy Bob Thornton's constant, almost uninterested, stoic narration. Whereas I like it when the Coens, like with Big Lebowski, they just have. I mean, that hasn't the intro and outro of narration, but in this we just have that intro of narration. I think it works really, really well to give us a setup. But the shot construction is absolutely sublime at times. The use of mise-en-scène to reflect the time period, but also meaning within the film. But as we talked about prior, you can overread that, and I often do. But color use, there's so many wonderful sequences where shadow and light and a sepia tone is played so well. And we get the sense of prison metaphors here and there, how Brolin's kind of trapped in this situation. But yeah, as Mike said, I think the one most outstanding thing about this particular film, and we have said it before about certain characters, but often it's the script or the shot setups, etc. It's Javier Bardem. The way he plays Anton Rigueur is just menacing. It's just menacing. His physicality, the use of his eyes, the sense that he always has a dangerous purpose. Wow. I mean, that's what steals the show in this film.
I think really, to me, what steals the show is really the audioscape.
Oh, the ambience, yeah.
Which is
it's really delicate.
Which is pretty much entirely reliant on environmental sound.
Yeah.
There is no like we've often talked about up until now Carter Burwell's scores for the Coen Brothers.
Brother in particular, yeah.
Well, that wasn't the score. That was more the licensed soundtrack.
Well, the music used.
Yeah. But his scores up until now. But there is a score for No Country for Old Men, but it doesn't play until the credits roll. Which really heights the suspense and the tension in the scenes. And really, I mentioned this as we were watching it, like. It reminds me a lot of The Day of the Jackal, which is a movie that Sleeve and I covered previously by Fred Zinnemann from the 70s, which is also an adaptation of a novel written by Frederick Forsyth. It's a movie directed by Fred Zinnemann, one of the best suspense movies ever made, with another very memorable movie villain as an assassin played by Edward Fox, who's methodical in very similar ways to how Chigurh is methodical in No Country, and the attention to detail in both movies really sort of stand out, as does sort of the scarcity of the audio, which is often tends to be bombastic and very heavy on beats and like in thrillers and suspense movies. There's none of that here. Like the chase
Has an airy quality to
the
it.
chase scene at the hotel, which is one of the probably the most tense scene in the entire movie, when Shiger and Llewellyn confront each other at the hotel in Texas, and there's a minor chase. Like in a conventional movie, you would have like drum beats, like boom 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 boom, or like some kind of rhythmic beat there as the chase is going. But you have nothing. You only have like the actual audio sounds of the bullets hitting the pavement or the asphalt or the brick walls or the glass of the car or whatever. Like it's only informed by the environmental sound, and then puts you right there next to Llewellyn, which really, really helps enhance the atmosphere.
Well, something I learned very early on when I was studying film, when I was a kid, was how great directors will effectively use silence. Now, this isn't silence; it's ambience, but it's the use of those diegetic, very subtle at times as well, and it really helps the tension. Like it really, really nails that palpable tension.
Yeah, and it establishes it early on, because we get that first scene with Shiger is when he's arrested. He's pulled over at the side of the road, and he's arrested by a local deputy who brings him in. He's alone at the police station, puts him down in the chair while he's handcuffed, and then calls his superiors to inform them that he's made an arrest. And so Shiger basically strangles him with his handcuffs. And as he's strangling him, we get the sound from a passing train from the nearby railroad, as the sort of crescendo of the strangling and the murder, rather than an orchestral score or beat.
Just works really effectively, the soundscape. It's one of those unusual films that doesn't rely on musical tracks or a score, particularly apart from the one you mentioned at the end. And to use environmental effects and use them as a crescendo to a scene or a sequence is really unusual. And again, it's just one of those things that the Coens make unique in this particular film.
Yeah, I mean it is also funny because they are probably the most perfect adapters of McCarthy's material, I think, because even they do still manage to sort of put their own spin on his material, because even as faithful as they are to the script, you still get these sort of Coen moments, like the receptionist at the trailer park where Llewellyn and Carla Jean live.
Yeah.
Who sort of stands out as character on her own, even though she's only in that very, very minor scene. She still comes out as a fully fleshed, formed, authentic character, both as a result of how the actress plays her, and as a result of like the mise en scène, the setup of her desk, her surroundings, and everything. And there are multiple characters like that only have like the one scene or the one line, and they still come off as like authentic people rather than like bit players. Or there is a sense of like it being like the wider world, and a world taking place beyond just the characters.
I would like to add to that. You
Go
are
ahead.
right. The audio is spectacular. I felt two of the better scenes, at least, when he is pulling the suitcase from the vent, and that tension is at like an all-time high because Anton's in the other room destroying the individuals who were in the other room, and he's just
Yeah, the
trying to
Mexicans.
pull it, and you hear it that silent shotgun, that or compressed shotgun going off, and he's like, do I even drop a sweat? Like, should I even breathe properly? Like, and it's that moment, and then the moment when they finally confront in the street, the audio was so on point after each and every single shot that was shot at Anton, Josh Brolin's character, I'm shooting at Anton, that you literally felt like you were right next to like those shotgun blasts going off and hitting the car, and it was just on point. You're like, wow, like I'm in the action. I'm literally feeling like it could possibly even be like akin to like maybe a video game where you're like the person holding the gun, but you felt right there in that very moment. So those were two moments that I was like, that it's just pristine. There is like so well done. To end also, silence, silence. When it's quiet, it's brooding. Well, not to get too far into the ending, but there's a scene where he's just sitting on a chair, and it's just like you don't even have to say much to just feel like that energy in that room, in that general area, and how exactly it is. So I definitely appreciate it from an audio perspective as well.
Yeah, it's I just want to go back to Silver's layering of characters. I think one of the great things that Coens almost always do is layer their characters outward to build a world. We've talked about it before. You know, these little moments with characters that maybe don't have much screen time. They only have a line or two, perhaps, but you get so much information from the costume, the mise en scène, the way the line is delivered, and the receptionist, as you said, is absolutely spot on. I also like the deputy Wendell, played by Garret Dillahunt. Um, he's another very Coen character, and he reminded me very much of the deputy from Fargo to some extent. A little bit
Right.
caught in the headlights. Um,
Yeah, he's less of a ditz though.
oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, the scene where Tommy Lee's grizzled old veteran sheriff and Wendell, the deputy, evaluate the cartel slaughter is fantastic. They come in riding on horses.
Yep.
Um, they they're looking at every facet of the scene, when people have been killed, what time compared to a more fresh bodies that have been killed don't seem to match the cartels, and just the way Tommy Lee extrapolates information from that scene along with Wendell and kind of starts getting a picture of what's happened. Like, there's no money here. Maybe there wasn't supposed to be. No, you don't believe that, do you? No.
There wasn't a line wasted.
Yeah, you can. Well, the
Wasn't a
beautiful
line
thing about that scene is, especially for Tommy Lee's sheriff, you can see the thoughts ruminating. He's such a great performer. You can see the process of logic going on in his mind while he tries to ascertain exactly how this played out. And in his mind, he's already, 3 steps ahead of where he needs to be. He's already worked out plenty of things that have happened and possibilities that he needs to try and seize upon.
And you get that great closing line for that scene, which is a mass ain't it, Sheriff? Well, if it ain't, it'll do till mass gets here.
Yeah. Yeah,
Just
that's
a
not
great
slaughter.
line.
What
Yeah.
is?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like you, Mike mentioned the performances, the standout being Bardem. Like I think Brolin is in a bit of a thankless role because it's a part that doesn't really require him to emote a lot. Like
Yeah.
it's mainly like a physical a performance that relies on physicality, which he pulls off really well. Like I, I still forgot what she's called. The actress who plays Carla Jean, who's also I think
Kelly Macdonald.
yeah, she's also the lead actress in Boardwalk Empire as well.
Yeah, and in Train Spotting, she's there as
Yeah,
well.
and other films. And nails like I think that Southern Texas drawl for Carla Jean.
Very softly spoken as well.
Yeah.
That very subtle performance.
And of course she is she does have some bite to her. Like you get that scene with banter between her and Llewellyn when Llewellyn makes it back to the trailer home initially after having found the money, and then you get, of course, toward the end as well, where she shows some character and some heart. Like I think that performance also is really memorable, and of course, I mean Tommy Lee Jones is effectively playing Tommy Lee Jones.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like he's one of those actors where he's so iconic that like Schwarzenegger or whatever that he transcends the character and really informs it. But I think it's one of his best performances. Like I mentioned, my favorite performance of his is probably like the three burials of Melquiades Estrada, I think it's called, his directorial debut. But he's really strong here as well. Garret Dillahunt also really strong in this one. He's mostly known as like a bit player on or character actor on TV. He's played several parts. I know David, the writer for NYPD Blue and Deadwood, was very fond of using him. Cast him multiple times in Deadwood as multiple characters. He's really strong here as well. Woody Harrelson.
He really suits that role. He really
Woody
does.
Harrelson also kind of charming Woody Harrelson in his short performance as well. And Sally Field also nailing it as the mother-in-law of Llewellyn and Carla Jean's mother in a quite funny performance.
That scene in the back of the taxi is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. Especially when you've been a cab driver. Yeah. It is particularly resonant. Yeah.
Oh, I'm just checking online. It's actually Beth Grant who played the mother.
Was it?
Yep.
Oh, I could have sworn.
I knew the face was different. So it clicked when I was watching it. I was like, I don't think that's Sally Field. But Beth Grant, she's been in loads of stuff as well. She's an excellent character actress.
Yeah, I could have sworn that was Sally Field. Really sounded like her to me.
Well, her look, the way she.
Good thing you looked it up then.
Well, I always do, to be honest, just because in the Coens films in particular, like I can roll off so many films cast with ease and the who the characters are and all the rest, but the Coens have such a depth of characters in their films. It's so easy to miss a particular character name or an actor who's performing in it. I mean, Stephen Root, for instance. Stephen Root has 2 scenes. One of them has dialogue. One definitely does not. He's another.
He tries to speak, but
he tries to speak.
There's something stuck in his throat. Yeah.
Yeah, which we shall get to. Some of the sequences in this film are absolutely fantastically put together. We'll bring it up now. The coin toss sequence. We have one later which doesn't work out in the same way. So Gregea basically ends up at a gas station, and the attendant is this older gentleman, and he has this kind of weird conversation where he's asking questions, and Gregea is intense. Like if he thinks you're saying stupid shit, he will call you out on it, or he'll ask you why he's asking that, or he's really intense. It's one of the, you had a conversation with that character. Yeah, not one for small talk at all. You get to the bloody point, or you might die. And so he puts a coin down on the counter, and he just says, "Choose a side," and we all know what that means. Choose the wrong one, and you're dead. You've got a 50-50 chance. And the tension built up, the pleasurable tension, as it were, built up in that short scene is iconic to me. I remember the first time I saw the film, and when it got to that scene, I was like, you pretty much need that. This is all you need to know about this character, about how absolutely brutal he is. He does not care about life and death for other people, but he'll give you, maybe if he deems it worthy, especially if you're unknowing perhaps, he'll give you that 50-50 chance. But that's a properly tense scene. He puts the wrapper down, it unfolds, just the little details within the scene, beautifully set up.
I mean, Shigeru really.
I like his ending.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead, Mike.
Oh no, okay. No, I liked his final words to him during the conversation. Don't put it next to the don't grab the quarter and put it in your pocket. Put it anywhere other than your pocket, because once you put it with all the other coins, it get mixed up and it no longer becomes a coin.
Yeah.
Even though it is. I thought that was so it was so eloquent, so smart in a way to kind of say that's your life. That is that is your second chance at this. Use it wisely. So instead of adding that to to continue doing the rest of your day, basically keep it sacred, keep this second chance as something that you can possibly move forward to and look forward to, instead of marrying into, and doing the same thing day to day. That's the way that I took it, at least. um he's also like, just the level of detail he also grabs from the very simplistic conversation, that he married into this little business, and he lives in the back, and he's been there for 4 years, and really he's not really asking anything overly complex or anything. Like, he's just very simple questions, and he's able to gather so much information from this teeny tiny interaction with this random individual inside this shop, that it was brilliant, it was awesome, like, and again, tense, it was serious, and you can tell from the jump, like, even though we had already seen him in a couple scenes after that, because that's like, what, maybe 10 or 15 minutes into the film, more or less, you guys would say.
Yeah.
Even though we had seen him and we know that he means business, this is like, oh, not only does he mean business, but he might be completely insane and also very smart. And that combination of things was like, this guy is unique. Like, that we had probably up until this point never seen a hitman or any type of character portrayed in this fashion before. At least I haven't.
He is one of the most unique hitmen in cinema history. Full stop. He uses, I don't know what it's called, but it's an air pressure machine that's used to kill cattle. A little cylinder pops out of a little kind of compressed air unit, not very far, into the head, and he uses that several times. And it's such an interesting weapon for a hitman to use, because it's compressed, there's no noise, but you have to be up close and personal, but you're dragging around this giant bottle as well. He uses other tools later as we see different, guns and stuff, but that weapon is so menacing, because what the Coens do for a lot of the shots when Shigeru is getting ready to do a kill or enter a building, we should say he also uses that particular weapon to pop open locks with ease just by shooting it out, and the door will open. But a lot of the shots for Shigeru will start on his shoes, and will just pan with him, and then move up to the weapon or his face. And the framing of that and the motion, the way it works to kind of create and establish very, very good tension, watching that methodical walk he has, beautiful, man. Absolutely beautiful. I also want to mention the framing in this film, which is, as with almost every Coen Brothers film, is astonishingly good. There's moments when both Shigeru and what's his bloody cat, Llewellyn, they look left and right down the street at various points in the film, and the way the framing works with traffic lights or pieces of metal or signs and frames within cars, and the wideness it feels. Oh, that's really top end framing, top tier framing. Just done wonderfully well, and I think it's Roger Deakins again. And we know how wonderful he is as a cinematographer, but that's some of the best framing. It really is. I love framing that uses the environment to create a kind of edge structure, because that's really true proper framing. And in this film, it's done bloody well.
Just to return to the gas station scene, I think that movie, that scene really cements Shigeru's character as the embodiment of fate, at least in terms of his own philosophy. That is his belief that he is not actually responsible for his actions, because he just sort of he's just a force of nature. Where that which is embodied in the line that he delivers when he puts down the coin to the gas station attendant, when he says, "This coin has been traveling 22 years to get here, and it's all coming down to this moment right now. This is what you've been putting up for your entire life. This is where your fate has led you." And he does the same thing when he later on confronts Carson Wells in his hotel room, when he goes, "If the path the road you chose led you to this path, what use was the path or the choices that you made?" Like, he and he does the same thing again when he pushes back against the line that people give him with "you don't have to do this," because he has to do this because he is the embodiment of fate. He is sort of the arbiter of people's destinies with a coin flip, which is why it upsets him very much when that gets pushed back on a bit at one point in the film. But yeah, I mean the Coens have always dealt with, or for the most part dealt with existentialism in their films very heavily.
Yeah.
Most notably, of course, in The Man Who Wasn't There, which was very, very heavily inspired by Camus. And here there's a very existential thread running through this one as well, which is also centered around Ed Tom Bell, the character played by Tommy Lee Jones as the elderly, weary sheriff who has this romanticized notion of the past, which is really sort of the heart of the film and its title, No Country for Old Men, which is this idea that Tom has that things are worse now than they've ever been. Like, people are more cruel now. Like, there's more savagery than ever. And of course, his uncle Ellis, in a pivotal scene, tells him that that's not actually the case. Like, his granduncle got shot on his front porch as people just watched him bleed out in the arms of his wife. And of course, the Cormac McCarthy book, Blood Meridian, centers around the Glanton Gang, which was a gang of scalp hunters that marauded across the early American West, scalping people left and right and selling their scalps to the U.S. government. So it's not exactly like human history is devoid of savagery up until modern times. So he has this romanticized notion, which is also really brought home in the final scene of the movie when he describes his dreams to his wife after he is retired, and he no longer finds a place because he no longer has the career that has defined his entire existence up until that point, which is law enforcement, which has been sort of the career for his entire family, the male side of the family anyway, up until that point, and he'll only get in the way of his wife's job as well. So he's just sort of he's devoid of purpose now at the end of the film after his retirement. And those themes, I think, are very poignant and delivered really, really effectively, particularly Tommy Lee Jones at the end.
He's the archetypal, world-weary detective police officer. You know, the character reminds me very, very much of Morgan Freeman's portrayal in Seven. There's a line in that film where he says, "I don't understand this world anymore."
He was, and he is, but that entire archetype is then subverted by the final line of the movie, which is, "Then I woke up."
Yeah.
Like, the movie essentially, like, throughout the movie, Ed Tom sort of laments on the cruelty of people today and the sort of the destruction that Chigurh leaves in his wake. And then at the end, he describes this dream he has, two dreams. Of course, it's notable to say that Llewellyn Moss, who we think is the protagonist, is not actually the protagonist of the film. It is actually Ed Tom Bell. Llewellyn Moss meets a very unexpected end in a motel room, shot down, not even by Chigurh, but by the Mexicans, whom a lot of people have forgotten at that point were in the movie, and fought.
And they bloody want their money back.
And just fought like, oh, Chigurh just killed all of them. No, he did not. Like, they come back in a big way, and so he has two dreams at the end, and one is where his father hands him some money and he loses it, which I think is symbolic of his sense of guilt for his lack of ability to live up to his responsibility of protecting Llewellyn, like he promised Carla Jean that he would. And he couldn't live up to that responsibility, like he couldn't live up to the responsibility of taking care of the money his father gave him. And so the other dream is when his father sort of rides out, he and his father are riding in darkness, and his father sort of rides out with fire to sort of set up a hearth or something in the darkness ahead of him. And of course, this represents the notion that there is this purpose that he also talks about earlier that he expected God would come into his life at some point, that he would find some
Yeah.
richer meaning or purpose or something in his life, but it just hasn't come to him. And then he closes it out but with the idea of then I woke up, and he has this immensely heartbroken. Lee Jones delivers this immensely heartbroken look in his eyes, like he's woken up to this cynical reality that there is no like intrinsic purpose or like hearth out there waiting for you. In that sense, that is an unattainable ideal, or that is just a dream, like this vague notion that doesn't exist in reality.
I like the line. They mentioned it twice. You can't stop what is coming. If I'm not mistaken, was the line.
Yeah.
Josh Brolin used it at one point when talking to the lady at the pool, or he was
Yes.
trying to get ready for what's coming, and then the older gentleman, while they were in the house having that
Uncle Ellis,
conversation,
yeah.
yeah, they mentioned that, and it's so true, and it's used so powerful because it's like the end is the end. Like there's you have to deal with a certain level of like finite to everything. So
Yeah.
that's what it felt. So it was like my job, my purpose, my life, it's finite. So when he like that look in his eyes, right at the end of the conversation he has with his wife, it was like a realization like there's no silver lining to this. Like that's it. It is what it is. So I thoroughly enjoyed that. What I enjoyed more was the old man's explanation of how things have always been the same.
Yeah.
Because in Tommy Lee Jones's mind, it was things should be getting better because I decided to become a police officer like everybody in my family has and do better or try to create a better path for everybody else. When in reality, men will be men, and we just change toys,
And also
and that's it.
he makes clear in the opening narration in the start that he's
Mhm.
grown up with these romanticized stories of these
Mhm.
lawmen on the American frontier,
Yeah.
right? Who are like some of whom never even carried a gun and whatnot. That he idolized and looked up to, and undoubtedly color that romanticized image that he has of the past as being
Well, that's
better
one of the other beautiful things,
than
isn't
the
it?
present.
It is a thriller, but it's sprinkled with the western, and it feels like that. The wide shots with very small characters. You had that wonderful scene when Llewellyn does take the money, and you've got that beautiful shot of his car up on the hill, in darkness, but with that sky tone in the background, and
Well,
the
that's when he goes back with water.
Yeah, it goes back with
Mhm.
water. For the one guy who's still maybe alive, but
Yeah.
probably no isn't, and that's it. That's the worst mistake he makes in the film,
Facts.
possibly. Yeah, going back with water to try and help that guy. But that beautiful shot that's set up with the silhouetted
I
jeeps
mean,
and the Mexicans stabbing the tires.
frankly, that wouldn't have helped him because he would still have the transmitter in the back.
That's true too.
Yeah, we should say that. So, the hitman, as it were, Shiger, is met up with two gentlemen who provide him with a transcoder, a tracking device, which is kind of cut and buried deep in one of the money bundles that's in the case. And so it's a game of cat and mouse throughout the film between Llewellyn, who keeps having to try and he sends Carly off, we should say, on a train to get out of Dodge, as it were. And it's a cat and mouse game of cat and mouse,
Bus, I think it is.
or spider and
It
fly.
matters.
It's not dissimilar to the structure of the Terminator in many ways. It's far more complex, but it's classic spider and fly. So you've got Llewellyn, who's constantly trying to hide the money. He's putting it inside vents in hotel rooms. He's trying to protect it. At one point, he gets to the border between America and Mexico, and he knows he can't take that money with him, so he has to throw it. He kind of tries to line it up with one of the posts so he knows where it is, and throws it over into a ditch with loads of grass or high weeds. And you've then just got the angel of death constantly after you, constantly finding you, constantly ominous. My favorite scene, I think, in the film, and the most tense scene, is that hotel room scene.
Yeah.
The sepia tones, so that the lights are all off. Everything's essentially in sepia apart from the black shadows that we get from various parts of the room. Llewellyn's sat on the bed, and he knows what's coming. He can feel it. He's got a shot,
He's lying in bed
Balls.
and he can't sleep because
and he can't sleep. Yeah,
keeps thinking, how did Anton find me at the hotel? How did he find me? How did he find me?
finally checks the
And
cache, yeah, and works
and
out
then he
that
finally thinks, no, there has to be something. But of course, as you mentioned, the transponder is actually hidden really brilliantly inside one of the money bundles. So even if you like go through the case and just like pull out the money bundles, you won't necessarily find the transponder because it's inside a money bundle.
That's exactly what I thought. It's something I'd forgotten. It's one of the things I'd forgotten. I assumed
Yeah.
it was in the case because it just made logical sense to me. But yeah, by burying it in the money, unless you are very intricate in the way you search that cache, you're not going to find it. And he just puts that next to him and holds the shotgun in the dark, turns all the lights off, as I said, so that sepia tone, that the beautiful shadow work. Directors often do crossed shadows or blinds or something so that you'll create a sense of entrapment or prison metaphor. That's beautifully done here. But the best thing about it is the door. So there's a tiny gap under the door, and you can just see 2 feet. Shigeru clearly just stood there, and he just waits long enough for that tension to build and build and build, and then the light goes off. Such a well constructed scene in terms of shot selection, framing, as we talked about, mise en scène and lighting, beautiful. And it's if you're going to show a student, for instance, how to create a sequence that establishes high tension over a short period of time, that's the scene to show it, because it's not loads of shots.
That and High Noon tend to be the ones.
Oh, High Noon's. High Noon is one of those ones I properly studied when I was a kid.
Yeah, I mean,
love that film.
I think every film student did.
Yeah, it's obligatory. You have to.
Yeah. Also, Day of the Jackal, made by the same director who made High Noon, incidentally.
Yeah, that's another fantastic film. So it's another masterclass from the Coens.
This is something that I just thought about it. It's the way that I started just picturing after you just said what you just said, very eloquent, by the way. I was thinking about how it's kind of like there are 3 representations between Tommy Lee Jones, between Javier Bardem and Josh Brolin. It's kind of similar to how time works. So you have past, present, and future. So in a certain sense, you have Tommy Lee Jones, who's 3 steps ahead of how exactly things are working out there in the field, but he's kind of crippled because age and attrition has kind of made him slower to the punch. You have Josh Brolin, who is not really like he's trying to catch up, but he's just 1 step behind Javier Bardem, who's kind of moving in the present. So Javier Bardem is literally setting the pace of everything, and Josh Brolin is just literally he's reactionary. He's not being as proactive as he would probably want to be. So he's letting basically kind of cat and mouse, or how was the other one that you were said?
It's called The Spider and Fly. Yeah.
Spider and Fly. So to me, that's what I just thought. I was like, literally how each and every single one of them, even though Tommy Lee Jones kind of to a certain degree in certain points knows exactly what's going on, can't really do anything about it. But Javier Bardem knows exactly what he's doing, knows exactly how to track, and you can't get in front of him. There's no way for Josh Brolin to ever be 2 steps ahead of him. He's just always being reactionary to what he's doing. And I thought that, like, even thinking about it from that perspective, I was like, wow, that's really interesting.
No, you're absolutely right. I think the whole purpose of Javier Bardem, apart from being the angel of death or fate, these kind of things, he establishes the pace of the film. He is the pace of the film because everyone is reacting to him and no one can catch him. In temporal terms, temporality, he's the one who drives the film forward because he's the one who is constantly on the tail of Llewellyn, and it's such an intense performance, and it's such a driven performance. Like his character has so much purpose. He has this, it's like whenever you see him, it's this ominous, unbearable, unstoppable force, and that's why the ending works so well. And that it's very rare in Hollywood. Although the Coens kind of work outside of Hollywood, although Hollywood money sometimes, things like that. But it's very rare for big films in what we would call the Hollywood system to have a vague or non-continuity completed ending. Continuity in films is really important, and usually it's tied in a nice little bow. Every strand. That's the idea. Now and again, you'll get directors who will leave it vague, but normally that's for a sequel. So something like John Carpenter's The Thing, for instance, you have Kurt Russell's MacReady and you have Keith David's character at the very end of The Thing, and you don't know if one of them is actually still The Thing. So that's kind of sequel bait usually, or to leave the audience guessing. Horror movies do it sometimes, but you don't often see that in a thriller or in a thrillerish western. So leaving it open-ended. And the Coens aren't doing it because they're sequel baiting. They're doing it because it's reality. What happens.
They're also doing it because it's the novel.
Yeah, obviously.
That makes sense.
All right. But yeah, Coen McCarthy does that in The Road, doesn't he? He's a very realistic writer to some extent as well. But the whole point is that this could be reality. You're not going to get everything tied up, in continuity terms in a nice little bow. The villain isn't going to meet
magically.
the villain isn't going to meet his maker. The hero isn't going to win, and that's what the Coens often do so well. They reflect an aspect of reality that Hollywood usually doesn't.
Yeah, although if there is, a common theme in a lot of their movies, it is consequence and causality, because you have like pretty much every Coen protagonist who makes this ill-fated choice to engage in a criminal enterprise that then blows up spectacularly in their face. From Blood Simple to Arizona Junior to
You'll see
Fargo.
McGill.
Even like Big Lebowski with the whole kidnapping scheme and the dude trying to get his rock back. Yeah.
The fateful choice you make, which has the consequence you never want and the outcome you really, really never need. Often it works out well, but generally in the Coen's thrillers, it does not. And this is another example of that.
Because you mentioned the ending being perfect, but which it is, because the film finishes on Ed Tom Bell's "Then I Woke Up" line, but before that we do get the final scene with Shigur, which is this guy who sets himself up as being the arbiter and driver of fate and destiny, and to the point where he goes out of his way to kill Carla Jean after her mother's funeral. A murder that isn't shown, but is highly, highly suggested. By the way, Shigur checks the soles of his boots after he exits the house, because we've seen throughout the film how meticulous he is about keeping his feet clean of blood.
Yeah.
Like he changes his socks and whatnot.
Just a lovely little detail that indicates, because we don't actually see the death
over the pools of blood and whatnot. Yeah. And so he drives.
Oh yeah,
he drives off. And so he drives off and ends up in a random car accident with someone who runs. I think they run a full stop sign actually, and basically ram the side of his car. So it's not even like he's not even at fault in the car accident. It's just completely random chance that strikes at him. Yeah.
Even that could be like a quick little, I guess, demonstration of how 50-50 works. He could have easily died in that. That could have been the coin toss right then and there.
Yeah.
He could have easily died in the car crash, or he could have walked away. Like he did.
Or he could have been crippled. Like there could have been any number of outcomes.
Correct. Yeah.
I like the fact in the prior scene as well with Carly, he's ominously sitting in the dark corner of the room on the chair. and she sat. She walks into the room and sees him, and knows kind of immediately, and she sat with the door open, and you get that split of light and darkness, which works really well. And he obviously plays the coin game with her again, but she just won't engage. She won't engage with his game, and obviously the consequence of that is her death. Although we don't see it, I like how that plays out.
And pissing off Shigar,
pissing off Shigar, the rejection of something a tool he enjoys to use.
There are only two moments in the film really where you see him get kind of upset. One is when he basically chokes on a peanut when the gas station attendant tells him that his wife's family owns the gas station and not him. And the other is when Carla Jean tells him, "No, I'm not going to play your game." It's not fate deciding this. It's not the coin. It's you. Yeah, you're deciding to do this.
It's a home truth that he doesn't want to hear.
Yeah.
And it takes away the element of fate.
Complete rejection of his entire sort of credo.
It's kind of shitting on his purpose. Apologies for the curse word, but she's trashing his purpose. Like, no, this isn't fate. You're not a harbinger. You're a man just doing man's work, which is destroy, which we see throughout the whole entire movie.
Yeah. It's like taking away Two Faces. Speaking of Tommy Lee Jones. Not a good film, but it's like taking away Two Faces' coin. You see that a lot in Batman's fiction when Two Faces' coin is taken away, his kind of whole identity is taken away. It's not Shigeru's whole identity, but it's his thought process. It's a mantra that he uses to justify a choice that has to be made.
His system of principles.
Exactly, that he then can rely on fate, a simple 50-50 choice, and she denies that.
Which also, of course, conveniently excuses him from any and all culpability.
Yeah, it was fate's fault. But she denies that. And I really like that because it becomes his literal choice then. And in his mind, he probably doesn't have a choice. She has to die because she's refused the very fabric of his character, which is brilliant. But as you said, that little moment afterwards, and this is what the Coens always do brilliantly, little moments that emphasize particular things. Just the cleaning of the shoes outside the house, by the front door. Really, really good. Just so we know that she's dead, but we don't need an exposition dump. We don't need to see it. It's implied quite easily enough. And so he
lifts up the shoes after killing Woody Harrelson. When he lifts up the shoes and puts it on his bed, that's what I thought. I was like, oh my god, yeah.
That's another interesting scene as well. So Carson Wells is essentially a hitman that's been sent after the hitman, or at least to get the money back, and he knows who Shigeru is. He met him November 28th or November 8th or the date. He says he's very good with dates and stuff. And so he's sent after him. He goes to visit Llewellyn in the hospital, who by now has kind of been injured
after the
by Shigeru. Yeah, and he's in a Mexican hospital over the border. And he goes to Carson Wells goes to visit him, discusses with him like, I can help you, I can protect you, but if you can find the money. And at this point, obviously, he's throwing it over the fence by the border. And brings him flowers, which I think is a nice touch. Woody Harrelson, as ever, has a load of charisma. He always does. Fantastic actor. I love him. Been watching him since Cheers. But he's great. Quite small role. And there's a moment when Shigeru catches up to him on a staircase and they end up in Wells' room. And Wells is sat in the corner. And obviously, Javier Bardem is, as ever, just wonderfully ominous in this scene. He's sat on the bed with his silenced kind of shotgunny rifle thing, and just has a conversation with him. And he knows what's coming. He tries to buy him off. I've got 14 grand in the bank. What I think the last part he says is, why are you so fucked up that you won't take the money? Anybody else will just take the money. But he already knows Shigeru. He knows his principles. He knows he's essentially a psychopath with a particular set of principles, and he doesn't often care about the money.
He asks
and then the phone rings.
He asks him, do you have any idea how crazy this is?
Yeah.
Do you mean the nature of this conversation? No, I mean the nature of you.
Nature of you, yeah.
Is the line.
Beautiful line. And so Woody Harrelson's character is killed, Carson Wells, as the phone is ringing.
Also killed kind of off camera because he's shaded
we see
by the chair.
We see it from the other angle from behind. Yeah. Again, it's not implied; it's there, but yeah, the way it's framed is in that reverse sense, which is really nice. And the phone's ringing, and Shigeru just kind of sits on the bed, just still, which he often does. We often get moments when he's just sat still.
After murder, which
After
is
mur- after
again
murder.
just
Yeah, it does.
implying
Yeah.
that this man is
Yeah, I mean,
Bat-
Brutal.
crazy.
I mean, the defining scene of that is when he kills the Mexicans in the hotel
goes
room.
and just-
When he sneaks in on his socks, and then after he's killed the entire room, he takes off his socks because they're now drenched in blood.
Yeah, silent, and again, as I've already mentioned, it's the feet. To emphasize the fact that he's wearing no boots and he's walking silently, but that shot, which is kind of moving backwards towards the room, and he's walking forwards in his socks, but you can see the weapons he's dragging. Oh man, so beautiful. The way it tracks back is just absolutely beautiful, and then again moves up. And now and again, we do get those Coenisms, we'll call them. A lot of directors use them, but the Coens have what I like to call a very, very slow pushed zoom. They use it in a lot of their films to create emphasis. A lot of techniques are used to use emphasis, like slow motion, but they use this pushed zoom.
Yeah.
And there's one part when outside the hotel room, after the slaughter, there is a plethora of police officers and flashing lights, and it's slowly pushing into this frame, really gently, and we get the reverse on Carly, and then kind of the sheriff comes into frame, and it's just beautifully done again. Lovely sequence with the lights flashing and everything else.
I mean, you already mentioned the framing, but the other thing that really that is standard sort of for the Coen is
Coenism.
is the level of the editing in the film.
Yeah,
which is incredibly tight. Like, but it's not. It's a tightness that still allows itself to linger on the shots. So you get that shot on the door with the hotel confrontation with Shigeru on the other side, where he goes to unscrew the light bulb to cast himself in darkness. After ostensibly he hears Llewellyn cock his shotgun in preparation for him barging through the door, and so like you get these lingering shots. Also, like even in the scene where Llewellyn makes his way out into the street and flags down a passing pickup truck and gets in, you get this lingering shot on the driver who's like stunned and then gets shot in the throat by Shigeru shooting at Llewellyn, and this deeply unnerving scene as these bullets that just pierce through the window like boom 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 boom. But again, amazing sound design. The editing is just absolutely stellar as well. From not just in terms of like some of the transitions you mentioned, one as we were watching, where it went from
the motion match, from one side and then up is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah,
and the way they use crossfades.
The first time it cut to Stephen Root's high office in the skyscraper, to faster cuts, and like the transitions and the editing both work in combination to really build the tension really effectively.
Well, I think I only saw one fade to black. I think just one. I think every other transition was a crossfade, so to keep the pace up almost. But I also one thing the Coens do, and it's a bit unusual, don't see it very often, is as they're cutting, or as they're about to crossfade, you will hear audio, diegetic audio normally, just a slight beginning of the next scene before you get to it. There was one where I can't remember what the transition was from in 2, but well, 2 I can. But the shot started to crossfade, and we'd already heard a knock on the door, which I think was the sheriff trying to speak to someone, and then we got to that scene. So you have this kind of audio hang, and what that does is allow the scene to already audibly present itself to the audience before you get there. And you don't often get that. Normally, it's just a fade, a crossfade, a fade to black to show passing of time, whatever that might be. But the way they create that structure and that overhang really works well with crossfades because you're already entering the next scene, through one scene, and that audio hang just kind of brings you into it, just a slight fraction beforehand. Just magnificently done. You just don't see it very often. It's a very particularly unique that they use.
Yeah.
There was a conversation that I actually enjoyed inside the right when he's coming back from Mexico, when he's talking to the individual, the border
The
patrol,
border patrol
basically.
guard. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's I like it because it's use of just basically explaining time, place, where we are in the world. Like he gives you just enough to know to understand what he respects. What time frame are we in? Are we in this like Mexicans could cross the border at any point in time? No, we're not really. So there's somebody like keeping guard or being the watchman, and still like and he thinks like he Brolin is playing with him Lewan I
Dwelling.
can't
Yeah.
remember his name.
Llewellyn.
Llewellyn, thank you. He thinks that he's joking with him at the start, and then he tells him, "Oh, you Vietnam? Oh, you're a veteran." Like, and then he's like, "Okay, somebody get this man like into like help this man into America." So it was so. It's not something that like it won't be like anybody's best scene. Like, wow, that is the best conversation I've seen throughout the movie. But it's so useful and purposeful that I really enjoyed it.
It's stripped back and it provides place and time. And there's another moment
Yeah.
where we see a grave of someone who died in 1980. Because you'd be forgiven for thinking this film was set in the 70s. Because everything is brown. Cars, I mean, there's so much brown and like
And
pastel
Sugar's hairdo.
blues and stuff.
His great
Yeah,
cut.
yeah, that hairdo, man. Oh, Jesus. It's such a weird hairdo. He pulls that off very well, though. But we see the gravestone, and the lady died in 1980. So you have a very quick and easy context to understand that we're in the 80s. Doesn't need to be explained. We don't need title cards. People don't need to talk about it. And that's what they do very well. Just subtle touches like that. I guess we should carry on the car crash because we only got halfway. So
I don't think we really need to, actually. I think we've covered just about everything from that point.
No, we didn't talk about the second half. So Javier Bardem has broken his arm. Two kids ride up on bikes. You can see the bone protruding.
Right. Okay.
And he offers one of them money for their shirt so he can tie his arm up. And almost like Kaiser Bloody Soze in The Usual Suspects, the last shot we see of him is him walking off from behind back into the world. And that's what I wanted to talk about in terms of reality. When a Hollywood film is made, or a typical standard traditional Hollywood film, that doesn't happen. That villain dies.
9 times out of 10.
Especially a villain that's so
9.5
brutal. Because that's just the way Hollywood see test audiences. Oh God, the bad guy got away. Our hero has been obliterated. The cop has not got his man. That's very un-Hollywood, and that's why the non-traditional way that obviously it's the novel as well, but it's beautiful. I love it. As a horror movie fan, I love it.
I think that scene also offers some juxtaposition with the kid who gives Sugar his shirt.
Yeah,
we get the earlier scene with Moss at the border to Mexico, where he's wounded and bleeding, and he comes across these 3 American guys coming out of Mexico after presumably a fun night out, and he asks one of them for his shirt,
covered in blood, bleeding out from the side,
for $50, a bit, or his jacket rather, not his shirt.
Jacket.
And he's a bit reluctant, but he agrees under the demand that he has to get the money first, and of course then he asks for the beer as well, and the first
which is excellent.
The first
I thought it was excellent.
Thought of the guy with the beer is, well, let's get more cash out of this guy until one of the other guys goes,
come on, just give him the beer.
Give him the beer, yeah. And of course
that's cynical, isn't it?
That's then juxtaposed with the kid who just freely offers up his shirt to Sugar to help out.
Yeah, I'll just give it to you, man. And he He takes, and the interesting thing there is,
This
as you
random
said,
act of kindness. Yeah.
yeah, the juxtaposition is brilliant because the prior scene is cynical because these kids don't care, they want the money, whereas the kid literally takes, it's not a jacket, he takes the shirt off his back,
Yeah.
as the expression goes. For this guy, he doesn't know. He certainly doesn't know he's a brutal murderer, brutal assassin, and just the way he walks off back into life, back into reality, back to cause more pain to people, is just so Coen's. I can understand why they wanted to make this film.
They're
Why they
considerably
wanted to
more
take this
hobbled
novel.
now with both a gimpy leg and an arm. That
Yeah,
probably
yeah, messed up
is at the
leg,
very least
broken
going to take
arm.
a while to heal. Yeah.
It's funny when that kid keeps saying, "The bone's sticking out." You know the bone's sticking out. That's so great.
Yeah, but that is completely believable kid reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's, for a thriller, you know, with kind of dashes of a western, it's very grounded. Yeah, and Coen
Very
Brothers
realistic.
films.
You said it a bunch of times.
Yeah,
Very
yeah. I mean,
realistic.
Coen Brothers kind of bounce between films that are often fantastical, and then well, some films are very fantastical, and some films are very grounded, and this is one of those grounded ones. I'm so happy that this came after The Lady Killers because I don't want to keep going on about The Lady Killers, but it's not just a bad Coen Brothers film, it's a bad film, in my opinion. Now, I know you have slightly different opinion. You'll hold it in a tiny bit more esteem than possibly I do, but I did not like that film. And to know, which is I'd never seen it before, obviously, but to know this is the film that came next, wow, what a return to form. Such a tightly made.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of critics who had sort of counted the Coens out at this point because they'd made Intolerable Cruelty and then Lady Killers.
Yeah.
So they thought, nah, they're just gonna make silly fare from now on. But no.
Yeah, like they'd lost it somehow. Yeah.
I hate that. I'll never understand that. I will never understand how people are so easy to forget what you're in.
Unfortunately, there's a very heavy sort of human element of what have you done for me lately?
Yes.
And a sort of sense of we like to see people fall from their pinnacle.
That's true. Yeah. It's sad.
That both work in sort of combination quite often with these things. But I'm curious, Mike, you had never seen No Country. Have you seen any of the other Coen Brothers films?
I got a little bit of Big Lebowski. I've seen, I would have to actually look up. I've seen a bit of Big Lebowski. I'll tell you guys exactly what movies I have seen. Give me a quick second. Coen. Off of the top of my head, I'd probably say no. But besides Big Lebowski, I did see The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. That's on Netflix.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
I watched that
was
several
excellent
while
as well.
ago.
Hail Caesar, you did mention it earlier, is on my list. Haven't watched it, but I do want to. True Grit, also on my list. Haven't watched it. And yeah, I think I watched Bad Santa's theirs.
No.
No.
Okay. I was about to say.
They did a little bit of script work, I think, on it. But that's
Yeah,
I was about to say. I was like, really? Like,
Thornton's in it. Who's in?
like you got all of them. Oh, I watched Bridge of Spies. Is Bridge of Spies? Bridge of Spies is theirs, right?
No.
With Tom Hanks.
That's
no?
Steven Spielberg, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe I got the wrong Coen Brothers movie.
But
it says in order.
But they are. I think they do have some writing credit on that one as well.
Yeah, they've got a lot of script credits because they're such excellent writers. Directors will often bring them in to dash a little bit of class, I think, on their.
Fargo's is theirs too.
Fargo, right? Fargo. The ones I truly recommend for you to just get into. I mean, it depends if you want the thrillers or the more comical films they make, because.
I watch anything. That's the best part.
Well, they have two particular sides to them, in my opinion. They have the dark thrillers they make, so your Blood Simples, your Fargos, No Country, and then they've got a more zany side, things like Raising Arizona, Hoodsucker Proxy. The only one I would give a total miss to is The Lady Killers. Intolerable Cruelty is a perfectly good romantic comedy, but Lady Killers I did not get on with. Right, so I love this film. I've obviously seen it many times before, just not for a little while. Its use of editing structure, shot selection, mise en scène, lighting, shadow, spatial relations, temporality, the narrative structure, the script, the characterization, the acting chops, the ensemble, the cinematography. and Javier Bardem's performance are absolutely sublime. There's a reason this film is held in such high esteem. It's one of their best. I'm probably say that every bloody week apart from the last two, but it is one of their best in my opinion. And that performance from Javier Bardem is menacing. It's truly menacing.
And unique.
And yeah, absolutely unique. As a hitman, as I said before, it's wonderfully unique characterization, and just the ominous nature of his presence, the way he enters a room, and the way the Coens shoot from the bottom of the frame upwards to create more tension. It's one of the most pleasurably tense thrillers that I've ever seen, and that's why it's so effective. All the things I've just mentioned.
I mean, it is rated by a lot of critics as their best film for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, to me, it doesn't quite reach that tier, even though I would qualify by saying it's fairly. I think it's fairly close to being a perfect movie. So
Yeah.
the fact, I mean, it's more a testament of the level at which the Coens make movies than it is to any flaws in No Country. But the thing for me that sort of keeps it like out of the top three for me is that cynical ending in terms of like the death of idealism with at Tom's sort of heartbroken eyes, which for an idealist like me is sort of can be fairly rough. Where I would much prefer the sort of the comforting ending of Fargo in Margie and Norm's bed at the end, with the love of hearth and home. Even though
I was going to say I prefer Fargo.
Even though ostensibly, Tom also is in the comfort of hearth and home, but he's completely lost at that point without purpose.
Yeah. I think although we've eulogized over the soundtrack, the use of diegetic sound rather than music, it's because it's a very quiet, ominous film. I think I prefer Fargo in many ways because of the setting, because of the dark humor, the comedy hooks,
Right.
and the rising
There
main
aren't a lot of
soundtrack.
laughs in No Country. Yeah.
No, there are not. It's a very, very serious film, apart from like the secretary in a couple of moments. But I think with Fargo, that the soundtrack is just, it's so good. And I think that's why I just put Fargo above No Country.
It is a shame, kind of, that they don't use the soundtrack for No Country, because it is actually fairly unnerving and quite good. So I would recommend people go look it up if they haven't stayed through the credits or listened to it.
Yeah, just stylistic choice, and it works. Right, well, that was good. It was really good to watch it with you, Mike. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you guys for having me.
No, it's been cracking. We get a few guests now and again here and there. We've had a couple for a few different things, but it's nice now and again to have a guest on who, you're studying film production. So I hope this was a touch enlightening here and there, and it's
Definitely.
It's great.
I was unaware completely of how good they are, because how we mentioned earlier, I watched Ballad of Buster Scruggs because it was on Netflix.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'll watch this movie. It's a Western movie, and I was like, wow, they're really good. I know of Fame, No Country for Old Men. I know of Fame, Big Lebowski. I know of Fame, Fargo. But you don't really know it until you actually watch it. So I'm definitely gonna watch Fargo now. I have to get to complete Big Lebowski now. And what was the other one that you guys have in terms of, or it would just be, we already watched one of them in being No Country for Old Men.
my favorite movie of all time is Miller's Crossing, which is a gangster movie they made in 1990 with Gabriel Byrne and Albert Finney and John Polito in the main roles. Fair warning to that one though. That one is dense. Like if you nod off for 5 seconds, you're gonna miss the exposition and like where characters are in relation to each other and what kind of schemes they're concocting. Because that one is classic sort of noir gangster. Like it is. It is very, very intrinsic in its plot. Like it is the most plot heavy Coen film by far.
What is it called?
Yeah.
Miller's Crossing.
Miller's Crossing. All right,
Yeah,
got it.
another fantastic cast as well. My favorite happens to be the Big Lebowski that you've just kind of seen bits of. But go and watch them all if you can. Apart from the Lady Killers, don't watch that, please. But oh Brother, Where Art Thou as well is a really funny, engaging film with a great cast and soundtrack. So what it'll do is, I mean, I don't know if you've got to this point in your course yet, but it allows you to study what's called the auteur theory, the notion of a director's particular, or directors in this case, plural, a particular style they have, the way they set things up, the way they treat films in terms of their structure, their development, their editing pattern, things like that. And it's a great way to understand filmmaking because Spielberg has his own style, Scorsese has his own style, Fincher has his own style, and you can see that throughout the body of work. So it's a great way to study film.
I'm definitely gonna try that, and I was definitely surprised because I was like, off of again, Fame is one thing. I have an older brother who doesn't appreciate, I guess, No Country for Old Men. He doesn't really like it. But me, yeah, this is one of the best thrillers, and like just throughout the whole movie, every time you guys say Fargo, I think of Argo, Ben Affleck's, like the most tense ending possible, along with I don't know if you guys watched The Last King of Scotland with James McAvoy and Forest Whitaker. Again, the tense endings are so like the implications of it are like so high, like it could all be gone in an instant.
I think you would really enjoy.
But this was like,
as well, then.
Yeah,
this was so like spread out. The tension was so like high at some certain points, and it would spike up, but it was like tense throughout the whole movie, and mainly because audio was very quiet, very airy, very like environment. It was so good, and I'm happy. This is like one of those movies like I'll probably rewatch it again whenever I want to like you said, either study for it or actually like just enjoy for what it actually does great, and that's just across the board, casting, editing. You said framework. Javier Bardem is a badass in my opinion. He's
hell yeah.
Well,
hey, look, maybe in the future we'll have you back on and you can choose a film.
Definitely.
Although we are very stringent, we don't choose obvious Hollywood bollocks. Normally has to be quite obscure or quite different. Yeah, no Marvel movies.
Don't worry. I wouldn't.
Anyway. But anyway, so thank you for joining us, mate. This has been the Last Edit podcast. I've been Citizen Sleeve. This has been
Silver Hawkins.
And thank you to our guest,
Mike Fury.
Now, don't forget, all the links to our Pry and Coen Brothers film podcasts are going to be in the description. So if you want to go back and watch any of them, you can. Mills Crossing is a bit older, but it's in order, so you can find the link. The link to our audio versions is also in the podcast. Talk to us in the comments. What do you think of No Country Old Men? Do you like the performances? How did you feel about the ending and the tone? What did you think about the lack of a soundtrack, the use of diegetic environmental sound instead? And what are your favourite Coen Brothers films? Favourite characters, favourite moments, favourite scenes? We would love to hear from you. So, take it easy, everyone, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Take care.